So yeah, we were just talking there. You're in Austin now. Um,
Yeah.
so I started following you like 5 years ago, and you were in Indiana, and
Yep.
I was doing wholesale deals like in 2021. I didn't realize how easy it was. I just kind of stumbled into it, and I did like five. I assigned 5 deals, and I saw you were doing deals. I think I tried sending you some stuff. Super new to the whole real estate world, but that's how I started following you. And
Okay.
you're in Austin now. So how long have you been in Austin?
I moved. So to make a long story short, I in 2021, I moved out of Indianapolis to Austin. I was in Austin for 2 years, almost 3 years, and then moved out in 2023. Bounced around to a few different cities, and then this past October moved back to Austin. So I've kind of been in and out two
Okay.
different times. But I was in Tampa for a short bit, Nashville, and then I just traveled a bunch. But it's kind of made me like respect what's like how good of a city Austin is.
Yeah.
Uh, at least in my perspective. Some people are like, oh, the place is
It's
not
gotta
not
be leaps and bounds better than Indianapolis, right? I can't
very
imagine that.
much so. Yeah, Indianapolis. I was born and raised there. Yeah, dude, it's like a little sad to be honest with you. Growing up there, most people like in your bigger cities, like your downtown areas aren't terrible, but man, over the last couple of years, like downtown Indianapolis has really
Just the
like taken
crime and drugs and everything.
yeah, it's just not like a place like for a while when I first started investing, that's where I was buying houses. You could buy them cheap, and I got to the point where I was like, wow, the crime here is so bad. I don't even want to. I don't wanna mess with it. So,
Were you
uh
having to factor in, like, an extra 10% of your cash flow for dealing with people stealing stuff or, I don't know,
it
break-ins,
was
that sort of thing?
it wasn't even like a percentage, it was like this is when I mean, I didn't know my head from my ass, but, like, I was pretty unsophisticated. I mean, I was just factoring in, "Hey, like, I don't wanna carry a gun to go pick up rent," you know? So, like, there was one of the first houses I did, it was just like a flip house, and the week that I put it on the market, a block over, these 2 ladies were found burned to death in the back of a car. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, like,
Oh my goodness.
this house isn't gonna sell," and
Oh,
so that's when I was like, "Okay, maybe I should try to find s" but I didn't have any money, so you're kind of, like, at this point where you're in the hood because that's all you can afford, and so, yeah, that was an adventure.
geez. So, what's your background? Because I know you were a realtor, and now it seems like you're more on the investor,
Yeah,
operator, scaling, running a business
yeah,
side of things. What's your story? How did you get to where you are now, and like
yeah,
kind of where you are now from a wide view?
yeah, so I was going to school in Florida, in Fort Myers, at a school called Florida Gulf Coast, and I was like, "Oh, I wanna become a realtor, like, I wanna sell these expensive houses," and when I first started, I didn't sell anything at all, like, I just yeah, you don't know what you don't know, and so I kinda fell into doing a lot of leasing for college students, like, in Fort Myers there, it was popular,
Mhm.
which in, like, maybe smaller cities, like, doing leasing's not a thing, like, agents don't do that, but that was a thing there. So I started doing that, and I started to recognize that, wow, some of these guys that own these college rentals, they're renting by the room for, 4, 5, $600 a room on a 4 or 5 bedroom house, like, that's a decent buck. And so that's what kind of got the wheels started, with, like, maybe being on the other side of, um, the ownership side of things versus being an agent. Because I was like, "Oh, hey, you go lease a house, you make a commission."
Mm,
And, it's just you just keep doing that over and over again versus the guy that just owns the house, like, okay,
yeah.
every month comes and people owe you money. So that's pretty cool. But I didn't have any money at the time, so I moved back home to Indianapolis, finished school there, and I knew if I moved back to the Midwest, I could back then in like 2017, 2018, you could buy, I sound old, but you could buy houses for 20, 30 grand. And so that's where I made the decision, okay, I'm going to go back, I'll save up some money, buy my first house for 20, 30 grand and just try to start my hand at that. And then when I moved back to Indy, I got my realtor license there to make money to try to buy more houses, and that's kind of how the snowball started. And so I started with one house and did like a fix and flip and kind of rolled the money, and then I was selling houses, representing agents, and kind of like recognizing how they were looking at deals and how they were buying things. And I did that for a few years, built up the agent side, had a small team for a little bit. We sold like a lot of rental properties, some small commercial stuff, apartments, and then in 2019, it was 2018 or 2019, I bought my first small apartment building, and then same kinda deal there. That kinda opened my eyes to a whole 'nother set of things and started doing apartments fresh out of college and still, acting as an agent. And then come, like, 2022, maybe 2023, I was just about out of doing, like, full-time agent work. I had met a guy in college who I'm now partnered with on almost all of ours. So we have self-storage apartments, the whole thing. And we kind of run almost like a family office, except without, family office money, right? So that's kind of how we operate it now. My cousins, they work with me, and so we've got this like kind of machine going that
Wow.
is now like just owning and operating different assets. So we'll do, single family flips. We do a lot of self-storage. We'll do apartments, but it's all like self-funded. We don't do syndication or anything like that. So that's kind of I guess the meat and bones behind it.
Wow. One thing I've been asking a lot about with the guests that come on, a lot of them are guys that do single family or they built up a rental portfolio,
Mhm.
and it seems like what gets you in the door is not what keeps you there. Meaning, like you get sold on the dream of like you want to buy 10 single family houses
Yeah.
and then you can just retire and live off the cash flow. Was that what your thought process? You mentioned like with the college housing, were you kind of just trying to buy a rental property and use that cash flow to live off of? And is that what happened? Like, were your expectations met in any way?
Um, so yes and no. Like I probably like most people, it's like, oh, you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or you see the videos of like just buy rentals, right?
Yeah.
And I like my growing up, my grandfather had some rentals, and I like helped in the summers work on those, and I was like, this sucks, right? Like who would want to do this? And so when I got like old enough and I was in college and I was looking at these different opportunities of what I wanted to do, because like I had previously worked at like a rent to own, like an internship, and so I had seen some different things of what I wanted to do, but I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so when I became an agent and I was representing some of these other investors, yeah, I mean, right, that was like their whole, hey, just collect as many of these as possible. But that's when I started to realize like the whole cash flow thing wasn't, especially on single families, is it's difficult, right? Because if you don't have enough of them like at scale, it becomes tough when you have a major repair item. It just knocks your entire revenue out for the entire year, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't necessarily living on that cash flow. I tell people like maybe not to do it the way I did, because I think I kind of did it ass backwards in the sense of I bought all this property when interest rates were really, really cheap. I
Mm,
was highly levered. I was like scraping together any sort of cash that I had, or like raising private money to buy them and refi out and all that kind of stuff. But there wasn't really a ton of cash flow being generated from those. So I wasn't able to necessarily live on 'em, right?
yeah.
That's why I was still an agent, still selling properties, doing flips. But I think that there's something to be said about at least getting the ball rolling and recognizing, okay, how can I move the equity around, right? If you're buying some of these value add single families or apartments, it's not so much, I think, especially when you're early on, like the cash flow side of things. It's more so the equity and how you start exchanging that equity around into maybe bigger and better assets that at some point in time you may start to see those things actually kick some cash off. But I think in those first couple years it is tough. At least it was for me, and I wasn't living off that cash flow per se. So
Yeah.
I hope that
No,
answers the
that's
question.
actually a good point that hasn't really been brought up when I asked that question. A lot of times it's people say, "Oh, yeah, it's more of like a 10-year play or down the road, you're gonna eventually it's gonna pay off." But
Yeah.
the equity component, I think is important, and I don't know if you've seen some stuff floating around. I think some people got in some lawsuit about subject twos, and they're buying properties with no money down and no equity, and I could see how that could put you in a pinch if you just, watch a YouTube video and you try to go buy a property subject to and you don't have any, like, sort of income or cash saved up
Yep.
because you're kind of just basically setting yourself up to fail in that aspect. Did you have like, was it a sense of security that you had enough income coming in, or did you have like an emergency fund that you would be like, okay, I can cover at least like a roof in the beginning, or what would you
I
recommend
didn't.
someone to set themselves up?
I like how I did it in the like beginning was, yeah, just horrible.
Okay.
I dude, I was like, I bought the first apartment building, no inspections, just like you just don't know you don't know what you don't know, right?
Okay.
No reserves, like literally just flying by the seat of your pants. And again, like you have, I think as I look back on some of that, like ignorance is bliss, right? I think some people get lost in the sauce of like analysis paralysis and well, my spreadsheet and this and that. And it's not to say you should go and be reckless, especially if you're involving other people's money, right? Like if you're gonna go lose your own money, hey, that's one thing. If you're losing other people's money, different ball game. But I
Yeah.
think as I look back on those experiences, was I the most prepared or like sophisticated in my approach? No. But I
Mhm.
think, and again, this is like just the market that I was in, starting in the Midwest markets where, properties were cheaper. It's not like you have a roof, that comes up or a major problem where it's like 50 grand. It's like, okay, hey, I got to scrounge together a couple $1,000s to maybe go repair, an HVAC, or I got to do a couple $100 on a water heater. That's some of the stuff that I ran into,
Mhm.
at least in the beginning, where it got tricky for me starting out was when I was doing some of the rehabs and not understanding the cost of what it was going to get to completion, and
Mhm.
either not having the funds to finish or not raising enough money, right? I ran into that a few different times. So, again, like if I were to do it all over again, I probably would have done it differently, right? But, it's, that's where we're at. So,
So it, like, going from there, doing it differently, what would that
yeah.
look like?
I was like, I got to this point where I was like, I was a real estate agent selling a lot of houses, and I was trying to buy properties as well. And so like I'd get to the end of the year and be like, okay, I had a good year selling houses and maybe I made good income. And then
Mhm.
the next year I was like more focused on buying properties. Like, okay, I bought this many
Really?
houses, I bought this many apartments. Okay, and I'm looking at my equity in these apartments and these houses, but I didn't sell as many, like I didn't do as well as an agent. I think if I would do it over again, I would have worked on really pumping up and doing a better job of making more active income before I started to go and purchase assets, right? Because again, like you don't know what you don't know, but I was like in 2018, 2019 making 50, 60 grand buying apartment building, like I probably didn't have been any business doing that, right? So my first year out of college, I think I took my income in 2019 from like 50 grand to almost 250 grand in that next year. And that
Mhm.
was a totally different experience because okay, you're like, all right, making 20 grand a month, like you okay, you're starting to make some real money that you can then take a portion of that monthly income and set aside to go get a little more aggressive and save. I think where people get it mixed up is like, hey, I've got 10 grand. Like, how do I go buy my first rental? It's like, that's probably not going to be the best case. So if I were to redo it or do it over again, I would try to figure out whether it's being a realtor or not, finding out or starting some sort of business that allows me to create some serious revenue and then work on developing that nose, that eye for, purchasing real estate at a discounted value and kind of turn it that way. Cause then you've got your business that's kicking off cash that
Yeah.
you can invest and if things come up, you're not as stressed. So,
Yeah.
um, that's probably how I would structure it.
I think the realtor side of it lends itself to getting a foot in the door quicker in the sense that you're already dealing with real estate
Yeah.
and being a part
Yeah.
of the conversations and learning. I could see that being an obstacle for someone that's just a high income
Yeah.
person and they want to get involved, but okay, it's like, where do I start? Maybe a single family is the right answer to that, but it seems harder to jump into like a commercial family deal without having already been doing real estate for 5 years. Did you feel like that gave you a pretty good advantage or
Yeah.
extra
I mean,
leverage?
you make a solid point there. Like I've seen doctors get crushed. And I've taken doctor's head off on deals, like, they just have no idea. They have too much money. I say too
Yeah,
much money, like, they're so when you have these professionals who are, like, really good at their profession, doctor, you may have an MD that's just like, hey, that's his thing, and doctors and attorneys very similar in their, like, attitude, like, what their specific knowledge is
yeah.
doesn't always translate to real estate, right?
Mhm.
And so they take that same kinda like, I don't wanna generalize, but like more of a pompous attitude and apply that to real estate. That's where those guys get killed, right?
What's the it's
Because
a Dunning-Kruger effect where you're good at one thing, so you think you're good at everything?
yeah, yeah, and so I think to your point, yes, like it does, you are able to see some different layers being an agent and kind of getting into that. Now, on the flip side of that, like some of those doctors and attorneys are represented by agents who equally have no clue what's going on, right? And it's just it is a recipe for disaster. So I was fortunate because I was posting a ton on Bigger Pockets, and that's how I'd meet people. And so I
Um,
was just getting an inflow of guys that had different theories or methods of how they were going about purchasing and running their operation. So I kind of got to see a little bit inside of their brains of how that worked beyond
mhm.
just like, hey, go write a purchase agreement. I kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So no, you make a good point. But
Y
yeah, I would say having, whether you're full time or not, you've done a few transactions as an agent probably lowers that bar of like, okay, it's not a huge hurdle to get over that, like, you know, idea of, oh man, like this is an overly complicated process.
Okay. So from your perspective, looking over someone that's a high income earner, they want to get
Mhm.
started and maybe doing some real deals, maybe other than
Yeah.
just a single family house.
Yeah.
Should they partner with somebody? Should they take a course? How would you direct somebody to get involved?
I mean, I probably wouldn't say like, okay, go to your local, REI or whatever the,
Yeah.
meetups are. I think
RIA or whatever.
yeah, like I don't think those are, don't get me wrong, there's some solid groups out there, but I think being able to connect with somebody who's a real operator, if they're
Mhm.
willing to partner and say, "Hey, look, like, let's go do a deal together. How can I add value beyond just, well, I'll write you a check for 200 grand. I'll write you a check for half." Like, there's probably gonna, if you're going to somebody who's an operator who's actively doing a lot of deals, it's probably gonna be your like lowest barrier to entry, right? And doing a deal with them or at least lending to them, some sort of way to where you can get a closer look like to what's happening with the action, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that, like, a lot of people will pitch, like, syndication and stuff like that. That probably wouldn't be something I would suggest, right? Because 'Cause you're just stroking a check and, we'll see you in 3 to 5 years. But, yeah, I mean, if you're really trying to I'll say this, like, if you're a high income earner and you're trying to, quote, unquote, "replace your income with rentals," like, you're gonna have to buy a lot bigger assets or something a little more unconventional than just a bunch of houses or duplexes or like, because it is literally gonna take you forever, right?
Yeah.
The net
A long
cash
road.
flow, like, let's say you're making 350 grand a year, right?
Mhm.
The net cash flow on a single family home, maybe a few $100 depending upon your market, dude, you're gonna have to have a shitload of those,
Yeah.
not to mention the invested equity to go and get control of those, right? So that's where I would start looking at people who are maybe doing some value add, whether it's strip centers, mobile home parks, apartment buildings, self-storage, things that, again, back to the point earlier we were talking about, is like the exchange of equity. Because as you move that equity around and you're stepping up the basis or you're 1031ing, right? You're kicking that can down the road and moving that equity into bigger and better assets that are going to provide more revenue for you. So that would probably be my suggestion, is like, go find somebody that's doing this in real time and figure out how you can either add value to them beyond just stroking a check.
Mhm. That's something I've seen you talk about is going from residential to commercial. So let's kinda get into that a little bit
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
What
Yep.
do you think are the main advantages of commercial versus residential?
Well, let's say, like, I don't think, like, I want to paint this picture. I guess residential is not bad. I
Maybe
think
that's the wrong question. Yeah, so,
I,
like,
I
I guess
think you can use and abuse residential, like, use it for all the good that it has, and I do think like residential will always be a good thing if you have the right perspective on it. And whether my perspective is correct or not is what it is. I look at the residential side of things as a lever, like a liquidity lever, right? If I can move these homes around, I can buy and sell and flip and wholesale these homes really quickly for extra cash to go dump into, whether that's self storage for me, apartment buildings, or larger packages of single family homes. Larger assets are going to kick off more cash. They aren't like, hey, I'm going to go buy this house for 75 grand and I hope to rent it for 1100 bucks. Like, that's just going to be tough to do at scale, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, that is, I think the biggest kicker for people is like, well, I don't know how to take down this apartment building, or I don't know how to take down this self-storage facility or the strip mall or whatever. Again, I think that the same, like, if you're going to go invest time into educating yourself on, okay, how am I going to go to flip this house, or what am I going to do to start a rental portfolio? Like, there's just fewer people that are talking about maybe the strip malls and the self-storage and things of that nature, but I never think it's a bad thing to try to go and educate yourself on those other asset classes. Like, I was in the same boat. I had been doing, a ton of houses, did some apartments, and then I had a self-storage facility come up, and I'm like, Dude, I have no freaking idea how I'm gonna manage this, what operating systems." Like, you just don't, again, you don't know what you don't know, but I'm like, "This could be a good opportunity just to learn and figure out, okay, is this something that I like? I'm not gonna go raise a ton of money on it. It's a cheap enough deal where, hey, if I get my teeth kicked in, like, it's not gonna be the end of the world." And so from that experience, doing it one time, you get into it, and yeah, you don't really know what's going on, but as time goes on, you learn and say, "Okay, hey, this isn't that bad, and I can get more efficient over here, or maybe I can hire this person." And I think that's one of the bigger kickers on the difference between commercial and residential is you start to have properties that kick off more revenue, you're able to afford to hire other people, right? If
Mm,
you're like a one-man solopreneur and you're like, "Dude, I've got," like, you've probably met these guys like, "I got 20 houses or I got 30 houses," but they can't afford to pay anybody because they're not generating enough revenue, or they don't have enough free cash flow, to help with the management side of things. I think that's one of the main drivers as why we've started looking at larger commercial assets is because as you grow, like, you just can't do it all yourself. There's just not enough hours in the day.
yeah. I actually have a quote from your Instagram. It's a hilarious
Oh,
Instagram, by the
no.
way. You have a good mix of comedy and real estate. But it says, "We bought this storage facility, cleaned it up, tightened operations, handled the stuff nobody talks about: trash, weeds, signage, tenant issues, visibility, presentation. We refinanced shortly after and had about 100K in equity was realized. Buying and selling is the easy part. Owning and operating, showing up when it's inconvenient, a whole different beast. Everyone wants to close deals. Very few will pick up the broom. The meat and potatoes of real estate isn't the purchase or the sale, it's the day to day execution, customer service, the maintenance, the small, boring improvements that compound. Commercial real estate lets you force value, but you can't force value if you refuse to operate. Don't be afraid to trim the bush." Tell me about that deal.
So, like, a lot of our, I'd say almost to date, all of our self storage facilities, I think with the exception of one, is all direct to sell. And so having a background in like being an agent, you're chasing people down, you're looking for sellers, all that kind of stuff. So I just like extract or just use those same skills to go chase people down on stuff that we can buy. And so there's the same kind of song and dance with this particular site. It was in a town where I have a bunch of houses, I have a bunch of apartments, and I think we have one other facility there. And so I would just like every so often, hit these people up. And it was like a few years worth of back and forth. "Oh, we're not ready yet. We're not ready." And then finally, like one day, they're like, "Hey, yeah, like let's do." I think I had like sold. I'd sent them some stuff in the mail and just tried to like stay in front, be unique, right?
Uh-huh.
And finally, they had agreed, and we had to move pretty quick. So I actually ended up raising private money to go take the deal down because I think I had cash out on some. I think we'd just purchased a larger portfolio, so I had a bunch of my cash tied up, but I knew it was a good opportunity because we had another facility in town. I kind of knew the values. I knew the rates that we were charging at our other facility, and this facility that I was chasing had lower rates, and I just felt like there was some room to improve, like how they were running it.
Mhm.
Storage was not their main business; it was just kind of like a side project for them. And so, yeah, we actually we purchased that thing, and then purchased it with cash. I'd raised a couple hundred grand from investors, and then got in there and turn the thing around. Like, the prior owners did not do the best job of like just operating it all. They would have checks come in, they wouldn't deposit them for months on end. So you had angry tenants. So we got all that kind of cleaned up. And then, we did refi. We pulled out a little bit of cash. Honestly, like the 100 grand was kind of BS. Like, I know that property is worth quite a bit more, but this is a whole nother topic we'll get into with appraisers, story for another day. But, it's just one of those where it's like, dude, there's so much value out there in various asset classes that you can get in, you can improve them by just showing up and giving it more attention, right? Than the next person on, especially if you're like young and you don't have a ton of money. I think that's one of the best ways to be able to roll the sleeves up and earn equity and earn, some willpower in these deals is by doing that kind of stuff, right? Like, just if you've got a ton of time on your hand, there's no reason you shouldn't be hitting follow-ups, and, there's no reason you can't get out there and clean the place up. Like, do I really want to be out there picking shit up out of the unit or trimming? Like, no, I don't want to do that stuff. But, when you start looking at it as a whole, it's like, man, there's a time investment that I can make now that is hopefully going to pay dividends here in the future for, some years to come.
I think that leads into the point that commercial is more of a business, hence the name commercial. It's you're operating a business with employees, and it's a lot different than single family in that
Yep.
aspect. Someone that's not really in the real estate world may miss that point. It's not necessarily like you're just buying a different type of property. There's a lot more that goes into that.
Yep.
What was the learning curve on figuring out how to basically run a business? Did, like you mentioned, you started out smaller? Is that how you were able to take it in the
Um,
beginning?
Kinda, you get pushed right into it because, like, you're running Google ads, you're running Facebook ads, you're running if you go buy a storage facility, like, this is, I think, a pretty big misconception that people have with storage. It's like, "Oh, it's passive. It's so passive." It's like, no, it's the exact opposite. Like, you're dealing with, like, 5x the people, right? And a fraction of the actual revenue from each of those tenants, right?
Yeah.
So, for us, like, like, on a lot of our apartments and single families, we have third party. I won't say all, but a good amount of it, like a 85-90% of our portfolios is third party managed, which is
Wow.
like a huge help. I think people don't recognize or they don't value property managers, especially a good one. Like, oh, the 10%, the 12, 8%. Like, dude, a good property manager is worth their weight in gold because it allows you to go out and look at other opportunity, especially like if you're a high income earner, right? You should not be taking calls at 9 o'clock at night like, hey, I can't get my like, it's just again, so though my point with all that is having third party in place on our apartments and our single families allowed us the time to take on the learning curve with the storage. And so that allowed us to dive into the marketing side of things, to dive into the day-to-day operations and the locks and like it is a different beast. And so we did that on one and we did fine and figured, okay, hey, that really wasn't all that bad. Let's go do this on some more, right? And then we grew. There was a period of time, I think it was like 12 to 18 months where we had bought I wanna say like 7 or 8 storage facilities that we were just turning and
Wow.
burning. We had plugged people in for management, and again, to my point from earlier is like, as you're buying some of these commercial assets, you're able to have additional revenue come in, larger chunks of revenue coming in to where you can hire people out to help you. And so that's kind of where we arrived to today.
Is there like a threshold of units where you need to replace yourself again? Like, I know you'd probably have a property manager, but
Mhm.
then at a certain point, do you need a manager to manage the property manager, almost like a CEO or something of your business
On
that handles the day to day?
on the storage or on the apartments or, singles?
Maybe that's another question. Is it they're separate kind of businesses in your eyes, or do you
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
whole? Okay, so kind
The
of
the
break that down.
storage is like its own I almost look at our business like a bar stool almost, right? So we got one leg that's like
Yeah.
storage, we've got one leg that's apartment that's like a residential arm, apartments and singles, and then we've got another arm that's like, it's our wholesaling flipping business, like our liquidity, generation.
Wow.
And so that's how I kinda run it. So we've got different people that run our wholesale shop, different people that help with the third party on the singles and the apartments, and then a whole different squad of people on the self-storage. And so, yeah, like it is a different beast. I think with the storage side of things, since we do run it all in-house, we have a couple different people, like my partner, Ethan, like he's still pretty involved in some of that stuff and myself too. When our other people are out, or they got things going on, like that's where I was talking about like picking up the broom. Like, like, dude, I don't give a shit how big you get. Like, when it comes to running your business, and I'm still learning things on this, right? But like, you can't be afraid to go, hey, pick up the phone, talk to a tenant. Like, I'm not doing that every day, right? But if there's a time and a place, and you got to do it, you just get it done, right? Now, on the third party side of things, I don't think we're there just yet. Um, as far as, like, our scale, I think I wanna say we've got maybe a little over 100 residential units going. It's terrible I don't know that number, but that, like, apartment and single family, kinda bar stool or, like, leg of the business is less time consuming than that of the storage and that of the, like, wholesale kinda flipping business. So that's kind of where both of my time is split right now is, like, growing the storage business and then helping grow the, flipping and wholesaling business as well.
Okay, so then the other one would be the apartments, and you said your other partner takes that more?
We have third party in place on there,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
so we really don't spend a ton of time on it. Like, there's just
yeah,
very minimal, like, interaction as far as, like, renewals and, but, he's like my partner that owns all this stuff with me, he's more of like an operating partner. How I would describe us is like, he's very type B, I'm very
okay.
type A. Like, if he goes on a seller appointment, they're like, "Hey, is this guy okay?" So it kind of works well. He's able to like really dial in our systems, our software, some of the back end. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like how our if you whether it's a bar stool or like different buckets. I think at some point in time, if we get to the point where like we have a, I would say like a substantially larger portfolio of like the apartments and the homes and stuff like that, there may be a time where it's like, hey, we need to probably bring on like a COO or somebody that can have a closer look at this. But I would say one thing too is being having all this as like our own stuff where we don't have investors, it allows you to I don't want to say like be like not pay attention, but you're not as like aggressive of like, oh, we got to do a distribution this month or we got to hit this IRR or whatever. So it allows us like I think to sleep a little better,
Yeah.
um, and just not be so like heavy emphasis on like, well, this rent increase didn't get 6.7%. Like it's just that's not what I want
Yeah.
to do.
You're not
So
beholden to the shareholders and
yeah,
making
and
sure that
again, there's people like friends of mine who've done that, and they have made a ton of money and done exceptionally well. It's just that's just not I didn't want to build that.
so how because obviously a lot of people do that is because that is what helps people get it done or that's the
Yeah,
common way. How did you
yeah.
manage to keep the investors out and keep this all in house? I mean, on paper and just at face value, it seems like a huge advantage to kind of be in control of your own ship. So how did you pull it off?
I think there's like, there's 3 sides to every coin, right? So the grass is always gonna be greener. There's some days I'm like, "Man, we should just sell this all and just buy T-bills or something." But I think like for us where we've been fortunate is like a lot of our deals have been pretty like have had a lot of hair on them. Like they're heavy distress, right? Where it's like the owner's just done with it or they're not paying attention to it. And so like there is a lot of work that takes place there to go and turn those deals around. Not
Yeah.
everybody wants to deal with that and everybody wants to do that. Some people are just like, hey, I've got a bunch of cash. I want to go park it somewhere and just get yield. And that's just been a different game. When I started this, I didn't have any money. So that was kind of the option of like, dude, you got to roll the sleeves up. You're going to have to go figure out how to go earn your equity otherwise because you don't have the liquidity to just go place, right? And so, like on my first couple apartment deals, I actually partnered with people that were my clients, like from being a realtor, right? And so I had that experience of working with investors initially, and like it wasn't a bad experience whatsoever. But then I quickly realized it's like, okay, it's probably going to be a better option for me if I can retain more of the equity or work with somebody that understands like, hey, we're not just gonna go into this thing day one and it's just spitting off all this cash. Like there is gonna be some work that takes place here and it may take a little longer than the spreadsheet said so, right? And so in a lot of these deals where maybe my partner and I haven't had the cash, that's where we'll try to make sure there is multiple exit strategies and we've got the property at a cheap enough price to where even if we had to fire sell it, we can still, we can still recover our shirt, if you will. And
Yeah.
those like times where you need gap funding, that's where I'll bring in private money, right? Where it's like 12-month term, 18-month term that I'm paying anywhere from, 8 to maybe 10%. And that's who's able to come in and basically fill the gap if we don't have the liquidity to take some of those deals out or take some of those deals down. So once we get those things stabilized, that's when we either decided to say, hey, we're going to refi this thing or we're going to flip it. And I've done that both on the single family side of things, self storage, apartments. It just, you almost, it's like dating, right? You got to fit like the right kind of investor with the deal. And
Yeah.
so that's just how we've done it. And one thing too, I think like our market is in the Midwest, like it's not like I'm paying a couple hundred grand a door to go take down even a small property, right? So we've been fortunate of that of like being in a just a cheaper market, I think. Like I think it would be very difficult to go and like model this same structure in like like one of the coasts, right? Just because the property values are freaking a lot more expensive.
Okay. And so your commercial stuff is in the Midwest still then, or do you have any in
Yeah, so
Austin?
so all of our apartments are in Indiana. Pretty much everything's in Indiana, and then we just picked up our first storage facility in Kentucky. So the plan is just keep, you know, just gobbling stuff up.
So that gets into another question I had about out of state investing. Is it
Yeah.
a misconception that you need to be in the state? Obviously it is in some aspect if I'm asking it, but like 'Cause I know, it can cause a lot more headache in the single family stuff if you own a rental in a different state
Yep.
and you're just thinking you're gonna have cash flow and collect a check, and then you don't see what's
Yep.
going on and it goes to crap. So how have you managed owning it out of state? I know you have a team and everything. Is that
Yeah.
a standard thing people can do, or how have you, learned to do that?
I mean, like I said, I'm spoiled because, like, I grew up where I invest, and so, like,
So you know
a
the
lot of
area already.
yeah, yeah, but I think, like, if you're listening to this and you're, like, California, New York, you're like, "Man, I don't really wanna invest, like, where I'm living." I don't think that it's, like, too big of a problem to try to go look at some other states. Now, I will say, like, go out there, right? Go out there and, like, take a trip to wherever you're going and maybe meet the people that are gonna be property man like, you're gonna have to have some people that are gonna help you out with it, right? Like, there's been people that I've represented in the past, like, on the realtor side of things that were, trying to self-manage, like, a duplex in Indianapolis from, Sacramento or wherever, right? And it just becomes tougher because 'cause you're, like, piecemealing everything together. There's not enough revenue there to, like, go and hire somebody or you don't want to, right? But I would almost work it backwards, like, with the end in mind of, like, okay, my goal is to try to go get, whatever it is, like, an extra 10,000, $15,000 a month. I know that I'm gonna have to get there by, like, purchasing maybe smaller properties or smaller multis or whatever, but I'm gonna have to leverage a team to be able to do that, right? And that's where I think it's good to go out, interview a few different property managers, interview some of the agents that you're working with. And that way, you kind of understand who those people are, get a lay of the land. Like, go spend a weekend or even a week in that market, go get a rental car. It's a very minimal or nominal expense, to go and do that versus like when I was younger. This is like 2019, 2020. There was a big there was like a fraudulent case that took place in Indianapolis where this company was like taking money from investors, basically saying, "Hey, yeah, like we're fixing up this house and it's going to be a rental," and it was just not real, right? These people never came in, never looked at the properties, and were like, I mean, it was a horrible, horrible thing, and I
Blatant
saw
fraud.
back in it of it because I was selling some of these properties for people, and they're like, "Dude, I paid 80 grand for this thing," and I'm like, "Dude, this thing's worth like $12,000, right?" So just do your due diligence. And again, I don't think that like you need to go look at every property. I think that's probably a pretty big misconception. Like leverage the inspectors, leverage some of the professionals, but I would figure out who those people are before you pull the trigger on a house. Like I used to hear people, they'd be like, "Hey man, I just bought this house. Like who should I use for management?" I'm like,
You should have started with that one.
What are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, again, start with the end in mind. Like, okay, this property manager, like, seems like they know their shit. Like, they're with it enough. I trust that. Okay, I've got at least maybe a 5 year or 10 year horizon of a relationship. There's some longevity here. That's probably going to be a better way to do it, if especially if you're doing out of state. Like, but there's so many people that like are like help with that kind of stuff as far as like the management. I don't think that sourcing the deal is as tough as managing the deal. Like I'd almost put more emphasis on management of the single family or the apartments or whatever it is. Like you're gonna be able to go find a deal. Like there's wholesalers and brokers and all that kind of stuff. But the management is like that's freaking
Yeah.
important, right? Because
That's makes or breaks the
a
deal.
poor management of a deal can poor management can run a really good deal into the ground very quickly.
Mhm. So, like, for example, let's take a kind of a case study of one of the deals you've done in the Midwest. What does
Yeah,
a typical deal look like? Like, what is the cash flow? Are you putting that all back into the business? Is it, supplementing the rest of your business?
sure.
What are the numbers? Can you kind of break it down a little bit?
Yeah, so like I'll give you an example. Like this is like one of the earlier storage facilities that we bought. Um, I think it was a little over 60 units. So what's interesting about going from the self storage, like from apartments, single families, everybody talks about unit count or like price per door, right? That's
Right.
like the,
Yeah.
the common thing. When you move into storage or even some of these asset classes, people price them different. Like you hear with like hotels, motels, like price per key, right? So in storage, it's price per square foot is kind of the metric. Now, like obviously cap rates and stuff like that. But when I'm looking at these storage deals, I'm like, are we doing it price per door? Like, how does this work? Because there's 60, but it's all price per square foot. And so, for example, we did this one. It was like I think it was a little under 8,000 square feet, so really tiny facility. But this was like I think our third one that was like all within the same trade area, and it was an inheritance deal. I purchased it for 250 grand. I think it was 25-30% occupied. Like it was beat up pretty good. Um, we got in, we spent, I want to say like $20,000 as far as like, renovations to get it turned around. We did some paving, cameras. That's the big thing about storage is like the cash that you spend to turn these places around, especially on smaller sites, is probably equivalent to turning a few apartment units or flipping a house, right? It doesn't take a lot of cash if you do it correctly. And so bought for 250 grand, put in 20, 25 grand, filled it up. We got it stabilized. So 90% occupied, and it was 90 days. We were like running and gunning on this one. I remember I had been back. I wasn't living in Indianapolis at the time, but I had driven back to kind of help do some stuff over there. When we took the facility over, we had basically no contact for 10, like we had some addresses and we had phone numbers that weren't working. It's a pretty small town. So I took the liberty to just drive around and knock on these people's doors and be like, hey, you want your storage unit? Like, if so, like, can I get your information? And so it was, kind of back to, picking up the broom, right? Rolling up the sleeves and just expediting that process of like, hey, I know the activities and the actions I'm gonna take today are gonna pay dividends in the future. Like, is somebody crazy enough or willing to go and do that? Probably not. But like, I figured, hey, this might be a good use of my time because it's just gonna speed up the process. I'm not gonna have to, try to call around all these different numbers or send mail to these people. Like, if I'm here, let's just go knock it out. Right.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, we turned that place around in 90 days. We'd fully stabilized it to 90%. And then we got it reappraised, and it appraised, I think it was just short of 600,000. I think it was like 560 or 550,000. We
You
pulled
bought
all
it
of our
for 250?
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Holy crap.
it was a great, like, just in terms of like the people that we had working with us, as far as like the stabilization period in 90 days from, 25-30% occupancy to 90% is nuts, right? So that was like, we like those kinds of deals. That's why I like the storage side of things, is because you can get in there, you can execute, but it is hands on, right? Like, you gotta there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, you've got your gate operator, you got your software. It's much different than just like, all right, like, sign a lease and throw somebody in there. But those are the kind of deals that like I get juiced up about, right? So we do some of the, like, that's would be like a typical storage deal, where we can get in and buy it for pennies on the dollar and get it stabilized, and we get paid. That's where you get paid to do it, right? Is get in there and reposition it.
You basically got paid, 400 grand to in 90 days. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
good
mean,
income right there.
I mean, and again, like, utilizing single family homes to be able, like, okay, if I know that I have a storage deal coming up, okay, do I need to sell some of these off? Do I need to refi? Like, I like that approach to, I've seen people like on the street, oh man, like, so you don't do single family. Like, what do you have? You have a problem with single family? I don't have a problem with single family at all. It's just like, use it,
How are you using it?
yeah, use it wisely, and especially too, like, dude, you're in DFW, like, I'm in Austin, dude. You're not buying houses for 60 grand, right? Like, a dog house down here is what, 300 grand. Like,
Yeah.
it's just tough. So as you start looking at these other markets and figuring out, okay, where do I want to like try to establish myself and have a team that I can leverage, like, it's probably going to have a big impact on how you grow and ultimately if you decide to stay there for a long time.
Yeah. Do you do you have a way of determining if you're gonna look at a commercial property as more of a add value and sell it or keep it? How do you do both, or do you do one or the
Yeah.
other?
We don't like, we just sold our, so we've got 12 storage sites right now. We had 13. We just sold our first one. I don't typically look at like the commercial ones just like to buy and sell. I like to try to buy and keep them if I can, but I do like flipping small apartments. Like, doing those small apartment deals, I love to flip those because there for a while, like, there was a lot of craze around multifamily. And I still think, people like multifamily. But I think that there's some aspects to it that, like, I don't love.
Mhm.
And so I have a lot of deal flow. I look at a lot of deals, and it allows us to get pretty, picky on what it is that we want to buy. So, like, in our, wholesale, like our kind of flipping business, we look at a lot of deals. We look at a lot of single family, look at multifamilies, and some of that stuff we wholesale out, but a lot of it we take down and wholesale, right? So where we'll purchase it ourselves and we'll kind of do some stuff to it and reposition and then sell. I do like those types of opportunities, and I've done a lot of those on, like, six plexes or eight plexes or things like that, where you can get in and out of it like extremely quickly. We just did one It was a 6 unit. I had like a 2 or 3 year follow up with the guy, and it was just like it was like a just a very base hit deal. Like the price per door was good. All the utilities were separated. It was on like well and septic. So it's just like one of those deals where even to an end buyer, like it's still cash flow. So we had picked it up for 2 and a quarter, and then I think it was like 29 days later on the dot, we sold it to like we physically closed it. We got it management plugged in, and then just sold it to a buyer for 250. So it's like, hey man, that's like a pretty good, that's a quick turn for 25 grand. And those are it's not like a huge profit, right? But if I were to keep that deal and refi, it's just like I don't know. It just depends on where you're at in the cycle and how much cash you need or where your liquidity's at. So
Mhm. I'm having a guy on the podcast, you might have heard of him before. His name's Cody Davis, and,
I haven't heard of him.
okay, so he's based in, like, Seattle area, I think,
Okay.
and, I've seen him on some big podcasts. He was on, Brad Lee's podcast. I think that's the
Oh,
first
no
time I
shit.
saw him. But,
Okay.
yeah, he's super young guy. I think he's, like, 20 years old or something, and
Okay.
he acquired, like, over 100 units within a
Okay.
couple years, something great. Like, he scaled super quickly, and it was all using, seller financing. So he would, like,
Oh, okay.
cold
Okay.
call
Yeah.
people
I got
off of
yeah.
Google Maps and, like, meet up with them and then
Yeah.
somehow, like, strike a deal. That's why I wanna talk to him is figure out,
I
uh
have seen that guy before. Yeah. Okay.
and I
Now
think he
I
had a partner,
didn't
I
know.
don't know if they still are, Christian or something, I think is his name.
I think his partner's in Texas or something like that.
Yeah, mhm.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know his name, but I'm sure like yeah. Okay. It's clicking. Sorry, I'm
You
a little
heard of him
slow.
or something, yeah. So, do you ever utilize creative finance? Could you see that working, like, getting a 30-year fixed rate on a
Yeah.
multifamily property and holding it forever? Is that possible? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, closed mouths don't get fed, right? Yeah, I mean, I've done like I don't want to sit here and be like I'm a seller finance guru. I'm not. I've done a fair share of them. Like we just did a storage facility at 2% interest, not fixed for 30, but it was 80% loan to value, 2% interest, 5 year fixed. Well, technically 5 year balloon amortized over 25 years. The guy and I we were a little bit far apart on price. And so I said, "Hey man, like I'll come to your price if you can come to my terms." And so he's like, "Hey, that saves me. I don't have to pay the capital gains tax right up front. Like, let's do the deal." And so yeah, like I think it's almost like doing a 1031, right? I think like you just got to get the stars to align. And I think it's like a hot topic because people see it. I would almost like compare it to wholesaling where it's like, oh, I can get into this with like little to no money. And I think like it is a good opportunity for a lot of people. And I've probably been pitching more seller finance here recently than not just because of like interest rates and things aren't moving, and so people are willing to look at that a little bit more. But no, I think it's 100% a viable option. Again, it just if the stars can align and that fits the seller's needs, then yeah, by all means. I mean, like I said, I've only done a handful of them, but
Mm.
for all of them that we have done, it's it's been good. I would like to do more of it, truthfully, because then it allows you most times like so there's a quote. I don't know if you know this guy, and I'm botching his last name, but Alex Caseta. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
He's like he's like a pretty big storage guy. He's in Orlando. He runs a wholesale shop, like sharp dude. Him and his brother. But he always like his main question. I learned this from him at I think it was like a mastermind. Tim Bratz. I think I met him at Tim Bratz's house or something.
Yeah, I
And
had
he's like,
Tim on the podcast.
when you're talking to sellers, ask them what their immediate cash needs are. And I was like, oh, that's like, what? But a lot of these sellers who are older, they don't need a bunch of cash up front, right? So it allows you to sometimes to get into these deals without having to go put like 20, 25% down. And so we've been trying to pitch some more, but I think it's a good way to try to scale if if you can pitch it correctly.
Do you think it's a realistic opportunity to invest in commercial real estate on the side? Like, for example, I'm a commercial pilot, so,
Yeah.
uh, you know, half the month I'm working. Do you think it's
Yeah.
possible in that setup to do investing, owning storage units and stuff in your free time?
Like starting out, I think there may just be like a bigger learning curve or like a bigger roadblock, right? Just because like time is tough.
Yeah,
Like I think when you're getting started out, it's tough to do if you're like because you're just kind of nervous about like, all right, I don't really know what asset to go after or what direction.
yeah.
No, I don't think it's like out of question. No, I mean, there's a guy like dude drives me nuts. He's also a commercial pilot. He's not the friendliest guy in town, and he's got some apartments and stuff like that, but he's just kind of like a grumpy old guy. And yeah, I mean, he runs apartments. Maybe that's why he's grumpy is because he does on site. I don't know. But he's like he's done well. He's got a few apartment buildings, and I think it's just like getting over the hump of like what asset do you want to go after? And like I've heard this from a few different people, like be careful what you build, right? Of like you
Yeah.
go build something where it's going to require a bunch of time and effort and attention. Like part of the reason I've tried to go after the assets I have is because it gives me some leverage on my time and like freedom of location is like probably my two most important things to me of like, okay, can I have my time and can I be where I want to be? Um, so no, I don't think I don't think it's like, it may just take a little extra longer.
Yeah. So, kind of on that note,
Hmm.
you started this whole, podcast or even your real estate, business in general was just like looking at single family, and now you got
Yeah.
like you're talking about the bar stool, and you got four different,
Yeah.
components of your business, and it's this huge thing now. I mean, relatively to me, it seems like a
Big,
huge
big
thing.
fish, small pond.
Yeah. Um, do you like what is the end goal here? Do you want to scale this thing like to where we're talking about where you're like, the BlackRock of commercial buildings and you're just, like a hedge fund at some point? Or do you want to have more of a lifestyle freedom component where you built up a portfolio where you can have a lifestyle you want and focus on other things? Where do you see this going?
I don't see myself as the black. Like I probably, yeah, I get myself in too much trouble by the things I say, but basically, like I never want to work for anybody. Like I want to be able to do what I want to do. I want to be able to say what I want to say, wear what I want. Like I never want to. I almost get like a social anxiety or like a just an anxiety of like, okay, well you have to be here at this time, and I'm like, like I've never had to do that, because I had like started in college and was like, okay, like when I was in school, my parents like, okay, are you gonna start like looking for a job or like, and I don't think they realized like I just wasn't wanting to sign up for that. And so I was fortunate enough because like obviously interest rates and through COVID and all that kind of stuff, like I did well, right? But I think to answer your question, like, no, I don't look at myself as like trying to grow this like massive Blackstone portfolio. Like my partner and I had a conversation when we first started the business. It was like, dude, let's make as much money as we can and have as much fun as possible, right? Like those are like the two metrics. And
Yep.
I think that's kind of why we've tried to do the whole like keep investors out is because I never want to be like stressed about, okay, I got to get on this like investor call and I got to like we got to talk about returns and IRRs and like people are hammering us about when are the taxes going to be done and all this other like I don't want to do that. So it's probably just like um more of a magnified, hey, let's grow this thing to really how do you like lifestyle, right? Like what kind of lifestyle do you want? Like we've been very fortunate. My partner and I, like we have probably I would say complete freedom of our time, of our location. Like when it's cold up north, he goes down to Florida. He kind of bebops around. I want to get a plane. I want to get a Phenom 100. Like that's my first plane that I wanna buy, and so now I'm
Right.
starting to look at things of, okay, well, where do I have to be? What do I have to buy to kinda service the debt on something like that? So that's how I look at it, not so much of like, well, I need to have 10,000 units by X date and this, that, and like when I started, that's how it was. I was like, I need to have 100 units and da, da, da. But then as you start to, I think, get older and progress of like, okay, what do you put the most value on? It's like freedom of my time and freedom of location is how I wanna keep kinda steering that ship.
Yeah. You build it around more what matters rather than
Yeah. Yeah.
what got you in the door. What
Yep.
would be the income you need to afford a Phenom? Like, do you need to have, like, 1,000,000 a month coming in, or have you thought about, like, what number would
Like
make sense?
one of the first metrics that I'm like I'm still working to is like 250 a month net with my phone on D&D. Like that's got to be like my first check, like my first base.
Yeah.
Um and I think that like it's tough because you only have so much bandwidth, right? So when you think about, okay, where am I going to go put my time and energy? Is it going to go chase income or is it going to go chase assets or is it a combination of both or what does that look like, right? Because you need income to live on, right? You can't pay your bills and shit like that with equity. Like right? You're gonna have to have income coming from somewhere, and so that's where, as I start to look at like, okay, some of these bigger purchases, whether it be a plane or like, dude, I don't have a car. I don't like. It's just I don't need one. I live in Austin. It's a small place. If I need to go somewhere, I Uber Black. Like just not something I want to dick with, right? But I do want to plan. I hate going to the airport 6 hours beforehand and dealing with like I don't want to dick with that. I absolutely hate it. And so when I think about okay,
It's my
the
everyday is going through that.
the the amount of time I gotta go and spend on, like, this, package of 2 houses that's gonna net out, $6 and a nickel, like, I need to probably spend my time elsewhere to where I can buy some it's gonna generate more revenue to where I can kinda have it aligned with what I wanna do, so, it's probably not the best, description, but that's where I'm at.
What about as far as a house? Like, how expensive of a house do you wanna would be enough for you? Or like, because you can only
Uh,
spend money on so many things, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
transportation, food, fun,
Yeah,
housing.
like, I mean, I don't spend a ton of money on, like, I'm not a watch guy, I don't like, I just don't spend money on that kinda stuff, but, like, the thing I noticed, there's a friend of mine who had challenged my thinking, like, because for the longest time, I was like, "Dude, I'll live in a shitty apartment, like, I'll just grind my face off," and when I moved to Tampa, Florida, a good friend of mine was like, "Hey, man, like, you're doing okay, like, come get an apartment at this place, like, let's change that, right?" And I was like, "Ah, dude, I'm not there yet." And I did it, and it was probably one of the better decisions that I had made in a while because it changed my perspective on, being in a environment where there's people that are doing better than you, right? People that are earning more income than you, people that have much more assets than you, and it just changes your perspective on like how much is out there and just the ability to go out and create, the ability to go out and transact in the world. And I think that more so now I put an emphasis on like because I spend a lot of time at home, I work from home, is like having a good setup. And even if it costs, a substantial amount of money, I'm okay with that. I'm in a point in my life where like I'm single, I don't have kids, like it's the dog and I. So we have like I'm in an apartment that's it's a pretty good size for me and it's not cheap, but it's something I'm like, okay, I can see myself here for the next few years and like kind of grinding, building my thing out. And
Mhm.
then depending upon where I want to be, like I would want to have probably 2 or 3 different spots around the country where I can kind of bop around. But I'm not like a, "Hey, I wanna go get a 10,000 square foot house just yet," if ever. I'm, like, such a minimalist. I hate getting I hate gifts. I just hate accumulating shit. Like, I will go and buy the same friggin' 8 pairs of black shorts. I've got 4 of these. Like, I'm just a weirdo like that. So,
Yeah, I think that's advantageous, though. I mean, you don't have things tying you down, which gives you more freedom to go to different opportunities. You spend below your means, so you can put more into your business. I think that kinda is, part of the equation to building wealth in some
and
ways is
it's gonna be different for everybody. Like, some people like, "Hey, I'm a homebody. Like, I wanna have a big house." I like to travel quite a bit. Like, over Christmas and New Year's, I was in, like, Sri Lanka, and I was in the Maldives
mm,
and a few other places, and I was like, "Dude, this is a lot of fun." It's cool to be able to go out and experience some of that stuff without having to worry about, like, "Alright, who's mowing the grass and who's taking care of the house? Like, who's
yeah,
taking care of the house?" Like, and I'm sure that that'll probably change as I get older and have a family and all that kinda stuff, but for right now, man, like, I'm trying to focus on, um, like, being as healthy as I can and trying to grow the businesses.
cool.
Yeah, man.
Um, question I always like to ask as we kinda wind down here is
Yeah,
kind of a thought experiment. If you
yeah,
had right now 3 different options, you had,
yeah.
one scenario A, what would you do with $10,000 right now versus if someone gave you $100,000 or $1,000,000? How would you spend that money in whatever way, whether it's investments or how would you go about that?
Uh Somebody texted me the other day, they're like, "Hey, what would you do with an extra 500 grand? Would you put it into Bitcoin?" I was like, probably not the best guy to ask on the Bitcoin thing." Um, I guess it just comes down to like what your goals are, right? Like I think everybody's in a different season of life, right? Yeah, I have this conversation a lot with my parents or just other people that are like getting to that point where they've worked a career for a long time and they're like, hey, we've got extra liquidity, or we've got certain things. Their goals are going to be much different than what like a 29-year-old guy's goals are going to be, right? So for me, like I've got, my living expenses and stuff like that handled. My whole thing now is like, how do I go out and have some of these multiples on the money that I'm going out and investing, right? I'm not so much worried about like lifestyle cash flow right now. Of like, hey, are is my car payment paid for, or is my whatever? Like, that's predominantly like what I would look at, right? Regardless of whether it's 10,000 or 100,000 or $1,000,000. I think as a young person, when you're early on, trying to challenge yourself to be able to put up, whatever that goal is, 50 grand, 100 grand, and then go get rid of it. Meaning you go and invest it into an asset where, okay, now you're broke again, right? You got to go figure out how can I go make that back while that money is working in the background for you. That's just kind of how I've tried to like develop that method, if you will, or that thesis, which isn't like it's nothing new.
Yeah.
But I think getting rid of liquidity so that you don't have a wandering eye of like, "Oh, dude, I need that next, like, car. I need that." Like, I think that's kind of a dangerous, path to get down, and then your ego starts driving your decisions of like, "Well, Instagram knows that I had the 2022 version, now I need the 20." You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Uh, so that's just how I kinda look at it, again, regardless of the dollar amount. Just being careful about, like,
Yeah.
getting too liquid.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good answer.
Right?
I guess okay, last question here.
Yeah.
If you were to give yourself one piece of advice from when you started, knowing
Yeah.
what you know now, what would that be?
Um, share more.
Huh.
I have done a pretty bad job of, like, using my resources and, like, tapping into my networks. I'm just like, I had this attitude for the longest time of like, "Dude, just build in silence, just build this behemoth." And I think it's probably prohibited me from meeting better people, creating, better relationships because I've, like, almost hermited myself in this, you know, hole, if you will, to just go out and like, and I think there's good and bad to it, but like really, just molding your skill sets and things like that. And so now people, oh, dude, you got all this stuff going on. But I think that I could have probably done a better job had I been more open about the things I was doing or receiving feedback or sharing to get some other ideas. But yeah, that's probably say like be open to sharing more. I'm trying to do more of that with social media and it kind of sucks, but
No, I'm a big fan. I've noticed, like, the last few months, you've been showing a lot
like,
more.
if
I
I
think
were
you've
a
been
friend of
on
mine,
top of
I'd
it.
be like, "Dude, I either need to unfollow you or mute you," because which is fine because your friends aren't really your customers, but, like, I think I've crammed in, like, a fair amount of life experience in these, like, last probably 7 to almost 9 years, and I haven't done a good job of, like, sharing what that looks like for people because you get in your own, like, tunnel vision of, like, "Okay, well, like, this is what I'm doing, so everyone else is doing that," right? And that's just not reality.
Yeah.
So
Awesome, man.
yeah,
Well, thanks
dude.
for coming on the
Appreciate
show.
having me on, man. I really do. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, 100%. Where can people find you? Like you said, you're sharing more. Where can people go see that
Yeah,
stuff?
dude. I'm working on like putting out a newsletter and stuff, just like shooting the shit, right? About stuff that I'm seeing in the market, and like I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's where I'm trying to grow right now. So yeah, it's Zach. It's just Zach.Hoereth. And then feel free to sign up on a newsletter. So
All righty. Get wealthy, everybody.